They say the quietest moments sometimes echo the loudest truths. No one expected the grocery store to become the center of a life-altering storm, especially not on a Tuesday, especially not in a town like Willamere, where gossip moved faster than delivery trucks and secrets rarely stayed buried for long. But that's where it all began. If this story doesn't tug at your soul just a little, you might want to check if you still have one. Here on True Soul Stories, we don't do explosions or plot twists every 30 seconds. We do something much harder. We tell real, raw human stories, the kind that sit with you long after the video ends. Love? Hope? Second chances? Yeah, we serve those in quiet doses, with a side of tears and maybe a miracle or two. So if you're the kind of person who still believes in kindness, connection, and healing that doesn't come with a punchline, consider subscribing. Now, let's begin. Just past the cold section, near the dented cart with the wobbly wheel and a shelf full of canned peaches no one ever bought. He'd only meant to buy milk, maybe some cereal. Carter Miles wasn't the kind of man who browsed. He walked the aisles like he walked through life. With purpose, sleeves rolled up, eyes forward, heart stitched tight from too many breakages. At 36, he had a look of someone who had weathered more than his share. Tall, broad-shouldered, with mechanic's hands and a veteran stare. The kind of guy who didn't speak unless he meant it. And even then, barely. He didn't see her at first. The toddler. She was small, no more than 2. Curled up near the bottom shelf of box stuffing, thumb in her mouth, cheeks flushed from crying. But the tears had dried. That was the first eerie thing. The quiet. The eerie kind that fills your gut with unease before your brain catches up. She didn't scream, didn't move. She just looked up at him, big eyes round and expectant, as if she'd been waiting for him specifically. And that was the second thing he couldn't shake. He scanned the aisle. Empty. Looked around. Waited. Surely someone had noticed. But no one came. 10 minutes passed. 15. He asked around. Cashiers. Shoppers. A guy pretending to be engrossed in toothpaste varieties. Nothing. No one knew her. No one claimed her. So Carter knelt. Because what else could he do? She didn't cry when he picked her up. Just nestled in like she'd always belonged there. Like his arms were the only ones she remembered. And that terrified him in a way he hadn't felt since holding his daughter, Lila, the day she died 6 years ago. By the time the police came, Carter had already fed the girl half a granola bar from his glove compartment and wrapped her in the extra flannel blanket he kept in the back of the truck. Her name, they found out, was June. No last name. No emergency contact. Just June, with a green crayon mark on her left sleeve and a head full of honey blonde curls. Carter didn't sleep that night. Not just because June cried for someone who never showed up, but because her silence afterward, tight, stoic, familiar, rattled something deep inside him. They said it would only be temporary. The state would find her family, track down next of kin, do their job. Carter had heard that line before, believed it once, back when he thought the system was built for healing, not just filing paperwork. 3 days passed, then a week, still no one. And every morning, June would wake up in Carter's guest room, arms outstretched, as if she'd always belonged, as if his home, with its uneven floors and chipped cabinets and porch swing that whined in the wind, was hers too. Carter tried not to attach. He failed miserably. There was something about the way she hummed to herself while stacking soup cans, or the way she'd pull his old denim jacket from the hook and drape it around her like armor. She didn't speak much, just a few words, but she listened. Oh, how she listened. He caught himself reading to her at night, singing under his breath while fixing breakfast. He even found her tiny hand-drawn pictures stuck to the fridge, him with his beard, her with a tiara made of stars. And beneath it in wobbly letters, my daddy? He wasn't. Not really. Not yet. Then came the call. Court date. A hearing to determine emergency placement and guardianship. Carter wasn't even sure why they called him. He wasn't blood. He wasn't licensed. He was just the guy who found her by the canned stuffing. But he showed up, with June in his arms, with his best flannel shirt ironed, and his boots clean for the first time in years. and he stood there in front of a judge who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, with a child on his hip who had already decided the matter long before the gavel hit the wood. The prosecutor spoke. Dry facts. No family. No claims. No known relatives. Then came the social worker, a young woman with a clipboard and eyes that flicked between her notes, and the child like she was inventory. He's a single man, she said. Mechanic. No foster training. No legal history, but also no experience. I have experience, Carter interrupted. His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. I raised a daughter, until I couldn't. Silence. The judge asked June a single question. Do you feel safe with Mr. Miles? June didn't answer with words. She simply reached for Carter's hand. And everything changed, but not in the way he expected. Because just when he thought the court might approve temporary guardianship, a man in a charcoal suit entered the room, briefcase in one hand, document in the other. Your Honor, he said, we have new evidence. A claim of parental rights has just been filed. Carter's got dropped. June gripped his hand tighter. The man continued. The claimant is requesting full custody. Immediate. He says June is his biological daughter. And then Carter saw him. A man in his late 40s, slick hair, expensive shoes, and eyes that didn't look at June like a father, more like a problem, a liability, or worse, a possession. That's when Carter knew. The courtroom hadn't changed his life. It was about to. Sometimes the people you think you're saving are the ones who end up saving you. And sometimes the truth isn't something you discover. It's something you remember. The morning of the hearing, Dean stood in front of the mirror in his tiny bathroom, trying to get his collar to sit right. His fingers shook slightly. It wasn't the court that made him nervous. It was the not knowing. Was he enough? Was love alone enough? He'd spent the last few nights learning how to braid hair. Delilah had started asking for 2 braids like the storybook girls. Every attempt looked like a war crime against the dollhouse. But she'd smile every time and call it perfect, as if his effort was more important than the outcome. Today, she wore the yellow dress with daisies on the hem, the one they found at the thrift store for $3. Dean had stitched the rip in the side with navy blue thread, because it was all he had. She said it made the dress look like it had a story. Maybe she was right. He buckled her into the booster seat in his truck, and they drove in silence, save for the soft hum of her humming. She hummed when she was content. And lately, she hummed all the time. When they arrived at the courthouse, Dean had no idea what waited inside would unravel not just Delilah's fate, but his own. The room was sterile and too bright, like someone had tried to scrub all the humanity out of it. Dean sat on the left side, Delilah beside him coloring in a little notepad. Across from him, a social worker with a clipboard. Next to her, a sharply dressed woman with hair so sleek it looked painted on. She barely glanced at Dean. Then the judge walked in, an older woman with tired eyes and mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. The type of person who's seen too many broken families to believe in miracles anymore. She began reading off the case facts, each word like a cold hammer on warm skin. Child, Delilah Evans. Age 4. Status, found abandoned at Holt's grocery store. Current guardian, Dean Marlowe. Single, unemployed, no formal foster certification. History of minor misdemeanors, mostly fines, unpaid tickets. One dismissed altercation from 2014. Dean shifted uncomfortably. He could feel the story being framed like a headline. Struggling single dad with no real claim to the child. But then something unexpected happened. The judge turned to Delilah. Do you know who this man is, sweetie? Delilah looked up, blinked, then tilted her head. He's mine, she said plainly. He's my daddy. It was the kind of answer that didn't come from DNA or legal rights. It came from nights spent holding a child through fevers and mornings spent learning how to make waffles with no mix. The courtroom fell quiet. The social worker stood. Your Honor, while the child clearly has formed an attachment, we have recently discovered information that complicates this case. Dean's chest tightened. The sleek-haired attorney leaned forward. We've located the birth mother. Dean's jaw clenched. She's not claiming custody, the woman clarified, but she has provided new details, specifically why she left Delilah where she did. The judge motioned for her to continue. She claimed she had a medical condition, untreated postpartum psychosis. She says she believed she was protecting the child by leaving her in a public place where someone kind would find her. And here, the woman glanced at Dean. She named the man she was looking for. The judge raised an eyebrow. She said she remembered his name, said he worked construction at a site near her shelter, said he once gave her a sandwich and told her if she ever needed help to find Dean Marlowe. Dean's blood ran cold. "I don't remember that," he whispered. The judge turned to him. "Do you recall helping a woman last summer? Homeless, possibly mentally ill." Dean shook his head. "I help a lot of people. Sometimes I just hand out sandwiches." The attorney continued. "She claimed she'd been watching the grocery store. Saw your truck. That's why she chose that place." The silence turned thick. The judge narrowed her eyes. "Mr. Marlowe, is it possible you were the intended guardian of this child, even if unofficially?" Dean swallowed hard. I guess it's possible. I didn't know." "But you kept her," the judge said, "without knowing any of this. You took her in." "Yes, ma'am." "And why is that?" Dean looked at Delilah, her curls bouncing as she swung her legs beneath the chair. "Because she needed me," he said, "and maybe I needed her more." There was a long pause. Then the judge sighed. "You're not what the system expects, Mr. Marlowe. But sometimes what a child needs doesn't come with certifications. It comes with courage." She tapped her gavel once. "I'm granting provisional guardianship, with oversight and mandatory check-ins." Dean blinked. I can keep her? If you're willing to fight for her future the way you fought for her heart." "Yes." Dean nodded, eyes burning. But just when he thought the day couldn't surprise him more, the social worker stepped forward again. "One more thing. A DNA test we ran for procedural thoroughness." She passed a sealed envelope to the judge. The judge opened it, eyes scanning the contents. Then she froze. Slowly, she looked at Dean. "Mr. Marlowe, there's a note here. It appears the mother listed you not just as a trusted contact, but as a possible biological match." Dean's heart stuttered. "That can't be. I never." The judge lifted her hand. "You're not a direct match. But there's something else. The mother wrote that the man she met at the shelter reminded her of someone. She believed he could have been the brother of the baby's real father. She couldn't remember. Said she was high. Said the man was kind." Dean's mind reeled. A vague memory bubbled up. A brother. Someone his sister dated years ago. The man had vanished after a rough split. Homeless. Addicted. Could it be? The judge's voice softened. "It seems, Mr. Marlowe, you may not be Delilah's father, but you might be her uncle." Dean's breath caught. Delilah reached for his hand. And suddenly, the universe felt a little less chaotic, a little more like it had a plan. Outside, the sky was changing. The gray of the courthouse gave way to soft blue as they stepped into the sunlight. Delilah in one hand, a future in the other. They drove home slow, windows down, her humming louder than ever. That night, Dean found himself staring at the old family photo tucked in his drawer. He traced the face of his sister. Could she have known? Could this have been part of something larger? Delilah ran into the room then, waving a crayon drawing. "It's us," she said, "and the house, and the dog I want." He laughed. "We don't have a dog. Yet," she said with a grin. He tacked the drawing onto the fridge, right beside a court document, provisional guardianship, and beneath it, in her crooked handwriting, "Daddy and me, forever." As he tucked her into bed, she reached for his face. "Are you my always?" Dean paused. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, I am." But just before he closed the door, the phone rang. He picked it up. "Mr. Marlowe?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. "Mayo, calm. I believe I may know who Delilah's father is, and we need to talk." Dean's grip tightened. The past wasn't done with them yet, not by a long shot. And so, Beneath the soft creak of porch steps and the glow of a kitchen light left on just in case, a single father stood, half in fear, half in hope, knowing that sometimes a fight doesn't end in the courtroom. It begins there. If the story stirred something in your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Let us know where you're watching from. Leave a comment, like the video, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. And if you'd like more soulful stories like this, subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest stories echo the loudest, and the next one is just beginning.